What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Kilo Loco, and today we're going to be getting into some push notifications. That's right, I'm going to take you from end to end, showing you how to get up and running with push notifications. Now, the example is going to be extremely simple. We're not going to build an entire app around this, but I am going to go through each step of the process in order to get you up and running with real live push notifications. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get you set up with the iOS side, right? There are certain things that you need to do in order to get set up with iOS. Make sure that you're asking for the correct permissions, things like that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get started with an Amplify project so that we can actually save objects to a database. The reason why we're going to be doing that is because our backend is going to be built with AWS Lambda, and the Lambda is going to be what we're going to be using in order to send those notifications. Now, the awesome thing about the way that I'm about to show you how to do this is everything's going to be done in Swift all the way through. Now, I don't really know a whole lot of ways that you can do this, and I honestly think that this is the easiest way. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right on in. So let me show you the project that we have started out. As you can see, I already have a project right here. This is my phone being recorded. You will need a actual device in order to follow along with any push notification tutorial. You can't do push notifications on the simulator that I'm aware of. And you're also going to need Docker for one of the steps that we're going to cover in a little bit later on. But those are like the only requirements you really need. So this is the project that we're getting started with. It's a simple enter in a message, and then you're going to send that message to the backend. We don't have any backend yet. It's just a Swift UI app at this point. And then I'll draw the parallels on what you would do for a UI kit project, but most of it's pretty much the same. Anyways, as you can see, we have a basic Swift UI project, and this is where all the action is going to happen right here in this send message function. If you want to know a little bit more about the way that I laid out this view model stuff, I have a video for that. And yeah, we're going to get working here, but first, before we do anything in there, before we start creating objects and sending them to our backend, we need to configure user notifications. So I'm going to do most of the notification processing in a separate object, a separate class. So we're going to call that notification service. I'm going to create a new file now and start filling that out. All right, so as you can see here, we have this notification service object, which conforms to NS object. It needs to conform to NS object in order for you to be able to conform to UN user notification center delegate. And then we're also making it an observable object because we're going to make it a state property on our app object, but more on that later. Don't worry, I got you. So just need to make sure that you have UIKit imported and user notifications. The first function that we're going to be dealing with are just going to be functions from the actual user notification delegate center, or user notification center delegate. So the first one is going to be what we do when we handle notifications in the foreground, and the second one will be what we do when we handle notifications in the background. So as you can see, we have these two different methods that we're able to use from this UN user notification center delegate, and they are will present notification. So that's going to be what happens when the app is in the foreground. So what does your app do when your app is in the foreground and it receives a notification? That's what's going to happen in here. And you have to call the completion handler, and you have to provide like what capabilities it's able to do, and you could like write logic depending on like how you want the notification to be handled and things like that based off of, you know, whatever happens. But essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that if the app is in the foreground, I want to be able to show a banner, and I also want to be able to play a sound so that I know that I got the notification even when the app is in the foreground. So make sure you call this, and then we have the other method, which is did receive response. Now this is essentially saying that you did receive the notification to your phone, right? But it's also saying that the user tapped on the notification. So that's why it's saying did receive response. And then we are once again calling the completion handler right here. Now, we don't have any functionality. We're not going to do anything special and interact with our app in like based off of what comes from the notification. But what we will do is just simply print out to our logs what information is coming back from the user notification, and we'll create a function that will handle that for us. So as you can see, we created this log contents of notification, and the reason why we're doing this in a separate function is just because look at how many properties we have to access in order to see what's inside that notification. Kind of blows my mind. I don't know why Apple made it this way, but it is what it is, so whatever. But all we're gonna do is just simply print out essentially like the JSON of the notification that's coming through. And then all we have to do is simply call this from both of those methods. So in the foreground method, it's simply log contents of the notification. It provides you that notification, but for the background, it's in the response. So the response has a property called notification, and that's what we're passing in there. So we'll be able to print out whenever we get a notification. Next, what we want to do is we want to add a function that's going to handle requesting permission from the user so that we can actually send them a notification, because you don't want to be like just able to receive notifications from any app, right? Like you have to ask the user if it's okay. Can I send you a message? And they're going to be like, oh yes, baby. So let's go ahead and create that function. All right, so as you can see here, we have this request permission function, and it's doing two different things. The first thing that it's gonna do is it's going to make sure that this object right here, our notification service, is going to be the delegate of the user notification center. So if we don't do this line right here, any logic that we put in this file is not gonna be ran, or at least handled properly. Then what we're doing, once again, we're using the singleton of the notification center. We're requesting authorization. We're specifying which types of authorization we want for the app in its entirety. Now, more likely than not, you're also going to want to include like a badge number, right? But we're not going to be handling badge number in this tutorial. So if you want to see something that's a little bit more advanced, if you want a little bit more of a deep dive on notifications and stuff like that, make sure you leave a like on this video, and then you let me know specifically what you want to see covered in a tutorial, or even maybe even an advanced course. I'd be happy to do that for you. But moving on, we have two different arguments that are passed in. We have granted, so did the user give us that sweet delicious permission to actually send them notifications, or was there some type of error? So errors, we're going to print it in a tutorial, right? And then if we were granted access to the notification center, then what we're going to do is we're going to register for remote notifications. Now what this will do is it's going to allow us to get the device token of this user's device, and that's going to happen in the app delegate. Now with this, with the Swift UI project, we don't have an app delegate. I'm going to show you how to make that. But before we do that, I need to emphasize that this action needs to happen on the main thread for whatever reason. I think it's because, you know, when you're asked if you can receive notifications, that there's a pop-up, but you need to make sure that you put this in the main thread. All right, so nice and ugly, just like that. Now we're done right here. Let's go over to our app object. First things first, we want to make sure that we're going to create an instance of our notification service and make sure that we're calling request permission. So as you can see, I made it an @state property. You know, do whatever you want. If you think that state object is right here, then feel free to go ahead and do that. From my understanding, you're supposed to use a state object on a view, and an app is not a view. I've had problems using state object in the past. I just want to throw that out there because I know somebody's going to leave it in the comments. But anyways, we have an instance of our notification service, and then on up here for our content view, we're just simply going to perform, you know, this request permission. Put this wherever you want, you know, but just make sure that you're calling it. Next, what we need to do is we need to actually create the app delegate that is going to allow us to get the device token. So let's go ahead and let's create that app delegate, and let's make sure that we have the register for remote notifications function in there as well. All right, so as you can see, we created an app delegate. If you start it with a UI kit project, you don't really have to do this step. It's given to you anyways, right? Or if you did a Swift UI project that had an app delegate or whatever. But anyways, we have our newly created app delegate, and we have this did register for remote notifications with device token. What a tongue twister. And it gives us the device token, but it gives us it in data. Hate the fact that it's data. Just you take that to Apple and you tell them I said it. But anyways, it gives us a device token in data, and what we have to do is we have to convert that device token, which is data, into a string. And you can't just do it any way. You can't just do a string from data. You have to do it this really weird way. So this is the way that I found, and I did it from looking it up online. It was just like a quick Google search. I've done it differently in the past, so whatever way works for you, that's fine. But essentially just turn that string into, or turn that data into a string the right way. And then once you have that, that's what you're actually going to be using to send notifications. So this says, hey, this is the device token, like this is the address for this device, and any notifications should be sent here. So that's what we're saying right here. Now, what we need to do is we need to get this token over into our content view. And we need to get it into this function specifically, because what we're going to do is the object that we're going to create is a message object. Now the message object will have a body, so it's going to have the message text as the body, but it's also going to carry with it the device token. You wouldn't normally do this, but this is like the simplest way to get this device token up to our back end, which we're going to cover in a bit. And this will allow us to know what address we're sending the notification to. And that will make a little bit more sense in the future as this video goes on. But all that said, we just got to get this over here. And the easiest way to demonstrate this is to use a singleton. So if you hate singletons, which you probably do, because for whatever reason people hate singletons. If you hate singletons, then you figure out a way to do this, but I'm going to represent this in a singleton. So as you can see here, I created this device token manager. This is going to be our singleton that's going to hang onto our device token so we can access it easily anywhere in the app. And what we need to do is we just need to set this token to this device token. So let's do that. All right, perfect. So we have that done, and let's just go ahead and make sure that we have our app delegate connected to our Swift UI app. Because right now this is just a floating object. It's just like, it's out there in the world and it doesn't even know where it belongs. It's lost, like, me in 2020 trying to find myself. So anyway, the way that you connect to App Delegate is by using some type of weird thing. I have to use autocomplete because I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's like App Delegate adapter, UI application delegate adapter. That's what you're going to put in there. Then you put the name of your app delegate, whatever you decided to call it. Called mine just app delegate. And then you say self, and then you just give it a property name. Once again, just app delegate, like that. That'll work. Whatever you want to call it is fine. But this line right here will connect your app delegate, whatever you specified right here, this object, and it will use that as the app delegate as opposed to the default one that just you don't really have access to. So just make sure you don't skip this line. Now let's go ahead and go over to our content view, and we want to make sure that we're able to access the device token and print that out alongside with the message, just to make sure that everything's working so far. Woo, that's a long one. All right, so we got our device token. Let's just make sure that we are printing out the device token. So assuming that we did everything right, we're pretty much done, except that we need to make sure that we have push notifications turned on as a capability for our app. So go up to your app, go from general to signing and capabilities. We're going to hit the plus right here. You can go ahead and scroll down or search for it, but push notifications is the one that you want. You're going to get this fancy little file right here. Fancy. And then what we should be able to do is, I think if we run it, everything should work theoretically. So let's go ahead and go back over to our app. And as you can see, we're being requested for permissions. I'm going to go ahead and say allow. Now I can say, what's up, sexy people? Oh yeah. And then when I hit send, if anything happens at all, that's a sign that everything worked. Our screen cleared. We should see in the logs that we are able to see our device token and everything. So what's up, sexy people, right here. We have like a lot of like weird stuff going on right here. Ignore that. And then we have the device token. So far so good. We're all set up and done with like just the iOS setup portion. Now we need to create an Amplify app in order to actually trigger these updates. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna head over to your favorite browser. This is not mine. I actually prefer Safari, but Safari doesn't work on anything. So go to sandbox.amplifyapp.com. I'm talking so much in this tutorial. You notice that? I'm sure you did. You're like, God, this guy just shut up. Anyways, we're gonna go to get started and we're gonna go to data and we'll do blank schema, create new schema. You're going to create a new model. Call it whatever you want. Call it notification, call it message, call it poop. I don't care. I'm going to call mine message. Doesn't matter. And what I want is I want to make sure that I have a body. So the body of a message, right? And it's going to be of type string. And we want to make sure that this is required. And then we want to have device token because we're also going to be sending that up to our database as well. So this is also going to be required and it's also going to be a string. We have our model set up. We can go to deploy because we actually need a backend for this. So you will need an AWS account in order to do this. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And then it's going to ask you for the name of your app. So I'll just call mine push notifications tutorial. All right. So then you choose the name of your app. You're going to do confirm deployment. And then what it's going to do is it's going to set up your backend. Now, it's extremely simple for you to move on from here, but it does take about 5 minutes. So, you know, stretch your feet a little bit. Stretch your feet? No, stretch your legs. That's the expression that I was trying to use, that expression, not stretch your feet. You don't stretch your feet. All right, and there you go. So if you see that the deployment status is deployment completed, then you're ready to go. If you try to move forward earlier than this, you're gonna probably end up having a wait screen somewhere in there, and that's fine. You can just sit on that wait screen, but I'm just saying, just so you know, gotta be patient. So then what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up the admin UI by pressing that one button, and then we're going to go to our data, and this data is essentially the same schema that we just set up a couple minutes ago. So what we want to do is we're going to go up to local setup instructions, and we're going to do amplify pull this. You're just going to click right there. Just click right there. Now, if you do not have the Amplify CLI, then what I need you to do is go back to one of these previous tabs. This one where you went to sandbox.amplify.com or amplifyapp.com. You go to next, you'll go to next, and you're going to get to the third step. This curl command will download the Amplify CLI onto your computer. Without this on your computer, these next steps won't work. So just make sure that you copy this, you click the little squares, you open up your terminal, and you paste that bad boy and you hit enter. Okay? Paste the bad boy, hit enter. I already have the Amplify CLI on my computer, so I can just copy this one and it's going to be good. So let's go ahead and paste that in there. I do have the Amplify CLI. And then what it's going to do is it's going to pull everything that was up there in this admin UI right here. Well, first it's going to ask us for permission and things like that. We're going to say yes, and we're going to say yes. Just go ahead. We trust you. We want you to take us. Yes. And then But let me tell you what it's doing. It's going to pull down essentially all the setups that we did in the admin UI, and it's going to pull it to our local machine. So just go ahead and choose your default editor. This doesn't really matter. We're not going to open it up. This part is very important. Make sure you select iOS. And then it's going to ask us one more question, I believe. Do we plan on modifying this backend? No, but just hit enter and it's going to say yes, and that's perfectly fine. And all right, we're all done. So let's go ahead and clear this. Next, what we want to do is, well, first, I just want to show you what's going on with your project. We have two different, files that were added, plus this whole entire folder. Going to get a little bit more into what we need to do with that. But first, what we need to do is we need to actually get the Amplify libraries onto our computer through CocoaPods. So let's go ahead and do pod init. Then we're going to open up the pod file. So open up pod file however you normally do it. Then go to the second line. You're going to make sure that you want to specify the platform. You're going to uncomment this line, so remove the hashtag, and then you're going to update from 9.0 to either 13.0 or higher. So you want to do 13 or 14. I'm running 14.0, like iOS 14.0, so that's what I'm doing. And then what we need to do is we need to add in the different dependencies. So let's see if I could have those pulled up just to show you where I pull them from. I go to docs.amplify.com.aws. I was looking at Android. Don't judge me. Last, let's go ahead and go over to getting started, and it's going to be like one of the first ones. So what we want to do is we want to copy these two lines, pod amplify and pod amplify plugin / AWS data store plugin. Let's go ahead and paste those in, and now your pod file should look like mine. We're going to save it, and then we're going to run pod install repo update, like that. All right, there we go. We have all the pods installed onto our project. So what we'll do, we're going to close our project. We're going to stop the task, and I'll go ahead and clear this with Command K, and we'll just do Z period. That just opens up your Xcode project, and it knows which one to open up, whether it's the Xcode project or the XC workspace. We're opening up the XC workspace. All right, we have our XC workspace all opened up, but first we need to actually add a couple files to our project. So what we want to do is we're going to go, we're going to right click on the folder, and we're going to go to add files to whatever your project name is. And what we want to do is we need to go to the root directory of our project. We're going to select these two files, amplified configuration.json and AWS configuration.json. We're going to add those. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to add more files to the project. And what we'll do is we'll expand this. We're going to go to the root of our project directory. We're going to select the Amplify folder, go to generated, models, and we're going to just select all three of these files. We're going to add those to our project as well. And now what we need to do is go back over to our app object, and we need to configure the Amplify, the Amplify libraries. So let's go ahead and start with the imports. All right, we got the imports. Now we need a function that configures Amplify for us. All right, so as you can see, we have this configure amplify function that I created. Now, one of the projects that we pulled in was a generated file that is called amplify models, and this essentially registers all your objects. I have another video covering all this different stuff, and as you can see, what we're doing is we're setting up our data store plugin and our AWS API plugin. Now I just realized that I didn't add the AWS API plugin to our pod file, so I need to actually go back and add that in. So I'm going to go back and add in the pod file, the other AWS plugin. All right, so I added that in. I'm just gonna simply run pod install again. and we're going to get that API plugin added as well, because we need both data store and API in order for everything to work. So once I have that in there, we are going to go back over to the app object, and we should see that this comes back. Maybe not right away, because you know how Xcode can be. Blech. But as long as we're able to add both of these plugins, the data store plugin and the API plugin, and then call configure, and we get this message, then we did everything right. We just need to make sure that we call this function inside of the init method of our app. There we go. So let's go ahead and run it, and let's see if we can get everything working. All right, and there it is. Boom, look at that, configured Amplify. So it looks like everything's working. So now we have a backend where we can create objects and then send them up to our, our database. So let's go over to our content view, and let's make sure that we're still creating this, this message object, which we now have generated for us right here. So it's gonna require an ID, which, as you can see, the initializer gives us that default. So we just need to provide the body and the device token and save that. So let's go over to our content view, down to the send message, and let's add in a function that essentially saves a new message. All right, so as we can see with the send message function, we modified it a little bit. Now we're creating our message object. We're saving that message in the result. If we successfully save, then we're just simply gonna say sent and then whatever the message was. And then we're also removing the message text as we did before, but only on a successful save. So what we can do is we can just run this, try it out, and make sure that we're still saving the object to the database. All right, so here we go. We have our message, sexy coding, and we press send, and we see that the message disappears, which would indicate that we did successfully save that message. And what we can do to make sure that it was saved is head back over to the admin UI of our app. Let's see if this one's it. Yeah, the admin UI. Then we go to content, and bam, there it is. So sexy coding is right there. And now we know that we're all set and ready to go. So we know that we're saving our content, we're saving our messages to a database. We know that they're being stored in Dynamo. And now what we can do is we can create a Lambda that is going to handle that for us. So what I did was I created the CLI called SLaM Swift Lambda Maker, and it's going to make it super easy for you to get up and running with Lambdas. So what we'll do is we're going to head into our command line. We're going to you could either do it in the same directory as your iOS project. I'm going to do mine in a separate directory. So as you can see, I have this overarching folder that holds both my iOS project, and then I have a folder that's already created for my Lambda. I'm just going to change directories into this push notifications Lambda folder. And as you can see, it's just an empty directory. There's nothing in it. But what I want to do is I want to use the SLaM CLI. So let me show you that real quick. So what we'll do is we'll go to github.com/kilo-loco/slam. So this is the CLI that I was talking about. What you'll need is you're going to need Docker, like I said in the tutorial, and you're going to need Swift 5.3. And this is how you get started. So first you're going to clone it. You're going to change directory into the clone directory, and then you're going to run make. That's going to install it on your system. From there, you could just head into the folder or the directory, like I just said, the push notifications Lambda folder, and we're going to run SLaM new. This will create a Swift package that's already set up and created with a hello world example of a Swift Lambda. So what we want to do is we're going to go over here and we're going to run SLaM new. And as you can see, a project is now created. You do ls, and now you have everything that the project requires in order for you to create this Lambda. And I have a video on that, so you can check that out as well. So go ahead and type in Z period, and that's going to open up our Lambda project. All right, so once your Swift Lambda project is all opened up and we should be able to run this and get like the errors to go away, you need to make sure that all the dependencies have fully loaded in so that the errors go away, and you know how Xcode is. But anyways, what we'll do is we're gonna go over to the package.swift file. Let me just go ahead and add this in. So we'll go over to the package.swift file, and as you can see, there's already a couple of things that have been modified for you in place of your default Swift package. Let me close this. We have something going on where there's a crash. That's to be expected. But essentially what we want to do is we want to add in a dependency on the target and a dependency right here. So the first dependency that we want to add in is AWS SDK, which is called Soto. So I'm going to just paste that in here. You can see that it's called AWS SDK. This is the link to that repo. And then we're going to say up from next version, and it's going to be this 4.7.0. Next, what we want to do is we want to get specifically the pinpoint library from it. So right here, I don't know why it's doing all of this craziness, but let's go ahead and fix that. And I think I'm missing a closing. Yeah, that's what it was. I was missing a closing parentheses. So there we go. I think everything should be fine now. If we do save, let's see if it works. All right, and sure enough, after long enough, if you just let Xcode do its thing, all the errors will go away. So just once again, AWS SDK from Soto, and then we're grabbing pinpoint from the Soto library. So what we need to do now is head back over to main.swift, and we're going to first import the pinpoint library. And then what we need to do is we need to essentially specify that the payload that we're going to be expecting from this Lambda to trigger it is going to be a DynamoDB event update. So what we're saying right here is that we're going to be expecting a Dynamo event to trigger this Lambda. And if you don't understand all of this, it's fine. You know, I can go deeper in a separate video, but the basis is that our Dynamo table is going to receive a new message object. This Lambda will be notified of that with this event, and the event will carry information about that object that was created, our message being sent, which is going to carry the body and the device token. So what we'll do is there are records inside of this event, or inside of this payload, and we could actually change the name to event just so that's a little bit cleaner. But we need to loop through each of the records. We're only expecting one, but there can potentially be several. And we need to extract the information. We need to extract the properties and their values from that message, and then we'll be sending those in the notification. All right, so there is a ton going on right here, and this doesn't look like Swift. Totally understand that, and if you're confused, even as we move forward with this section, that's perfectly fine. Keep that in mind, that being confused with this section is going to be perfectly fine. I'll explain it as best as I can, but you don't need to have this memorized, and you don't need to fully understand everything that's going on, because even I don't. So let me go over this. So like I said, each event that comes in whenever it's triggered, right, is going to have records. And what we want to do is we want to loop over each of those records. Then we're going to try to get a snapshot. So from this library, it's going to be called an image. So image is going to essentially be a snapshot of the data of what is happening in the database. So when you see image, don't think of like a picture, like a JPEG or anything like that. It's going to be like a snapshot of what's coming in. So we're going to try to get the snapshot. Now, in my past experience, you generally want the whatever is new, right? Like the newest, latest snapshot of that image. But for whatever reason, sometimes that data is stored specifically on the old image, and I don't know when and where that decision is made. So what we're doing is we're saying, give me the new image. If that's nil, then give me the old image. Now, if that is nil, if we're still getting nil, then we're just simply going to return And we're gonna return, which kills the Lambda right there. It ends the code, right? But we're gonna do a completion saying that we had a failure, and then I created this Lambda error down here. You can see that I just created this. I just wrote it up. Make it more specialized if you want. But then we're just gonna say failure, which is we're calling completion right here. So since this returns void, I can just do return on the completion right here. I was doing this before, which makes a little bit more sense. Like if you're not used to seeing this, but since this returns void, it's okay to say return this. So it's still returning void. So it's just a little bit cleaner, saves us a little bit of room. However you want to do it is fine. So like I said, now we have a snapshot. Now, in order to decode the properties from that snapshot, just think of it kind of like JSON. It's kind of like JSON. It's not a dictionary. It's kind of like it though. What you would do is you would say snapshot and then you would pass in the key. Now, in order to decode this, you couldn't just say like, oh, that's going to be a string. It's not. It's going to be a case of whatever this is. Let's see if I could get a DynamoDB.attribute value. So they're attribute values. And the way that you decode an attribute value is you say that's like a dot string, or it's like a dot, maybe a int or something like that. It doesn't matter, but it's going to be like a switch statement essentially. And we're going to grab the value and set it to this variable or this constant right here called device token. So I'm saying let device token equals this being decoded as a string. And then if we can't get the device token for whatever reason, then we're just going to throw another error, or we're going to do a completion. You need to make sure that the completion is ran with a failure, right? Same exact thing right here. I'm just going to call it message body instead, just so that it's a little bit, more straightforward. Or decoding whatever there is for body, and we're decoding it as a string. If that doesn't work, then we're going to throw an error saying no message body. So far, hopefully, so good. All right, now what we need to do is we need to actually use the pinpoint. We need to create an instance of the pinpoint object. So let's go ahead and try to do that now. All right, so we're going to attempt to create an instance of our pinpoint object. Now we're going to need an access key ID and a secret access key. By default, Lambda, a Swift Lambda, will receive these values as environment variables. So you don't need to go and find them somewhere. They're provided for you, but what you have to do is you have to decode them. So at the top, let's go ahead and decode those environment variables. All right, so as you can see here, we have the access key ID. They're provided once again as environment variables. You just need to make sure that you have these properties or these strings spelled out correctly. If you don't, you're gonna be in a heap of trouble because you're not gonna know what's going on, man. So let's just go ahead and pass those in right here. So we have the access key ID and then the secret access key. And as you can see, let me just make this a little bit cleaner just so that we can see everything that's going on all in one spot. And as you can see, I set my region to US West 2. That's the same region as my database as well. So just keep that in mind. Now that we have an instance of pinpoint, let's go ahead and try to send a message. So as you can see here, this pinpoint object that we just created has a function on it called send messages, and it's expecting this send messages request. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this in this order is because it's easier to remember how to do this without coming back to this video, because it's such a long video, by just doing it backwards. So you just keep in mind, I'm using pinpoint. I want to send messages, and then what you need to do is create this object. So we're going to start working backwards and creating the objects that are required to send this message. So first thing that we're going to do is create a pinpoint.sendMessageRequest. So as you can see here, we now have an instance of our send message request, and we need to have an application ID. This is a whole nother process that we have to go through. So I'm just going to enter in an empty string, and we're going to continue working backwards while we're still focusing on the Lambda itself. So let's go ahead and create a message request. All right, so as you can see, we have our message request object right here, and we're going to initialize it with these two arguments, which is addresses and message configuration. Now for the addresses, this is where we're actually going to pass the device token where we want to send that message. So let's go ahead and enter in device token. That's going to be the key, oddly enough. And then the value for that key is going to be a pinpoint address configuration. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so as you can see, we have the device token as the key. And then we need to pass in an address configuration. We'll initialize this address configuration with APNs Sandbox, because that's where we're going to be sending it to, APNs Sandbox. Now, if you wanted to send it to production, if this was like a production ready app, then you would just do APNs. But just keep in mind that, like, depending on how you set up your APNs configuration and stuff like that, that will determine what you need to put here and like the situation that you're testing it in. But for us, we're testing, so we're going to do APNs Sandbox. Now let's go back over to this direct message configuration, and let's go ahead and create an instance of that. So now we're creating an APNs direct message configuration, and in order to create that, we need to create a pinpoint APNs message. So let's do that too. All right, so here's the juicy part. This is exactly how you would construct and provide the different values for your message, your notification, right? So like if you were to take a look at this, I don't know if it's gonna actually open up or not, but if you take a look at the initializer of this object, which let's see if it'll give it to us. You can see that there's all kinds of different things that you can actually add to it. So you can specify the badge, the body, category. So like the more in-depth knowledge you have about push notifications and things like that, the more things that you could put in here. It's also worth noting that obviously if you could create an APNs message, you can do the same thing and follow the same steps if you wanted to send notifications to Android. We're just covering iOS today though. So I'm going to create this message with a body. So the body is going to be our message body, right? So we have the message body. We also need to include the sound. All this stuff is, all the arguments are in alphabetical order. So just keep that in mind. And the sound is going to be the bing bong sound .aiff, like that. And then we want to also include the title. And the title, we don't have anything special. So I'll just say Sexy Swift Lambda. Like that, bam. So that is our message. We created a direct message configuration. We could pass that message configuration right here, which completes the creation of our message request, which is then entered into the send messages request. And then inside of the send messages request, it will take our send messages request like that. And that will technically send our message. I'm going to go back over this, but first let's finish this train of thought. So we have our send messages. Now what we need to do is we still need to make sure that we're calling the completion handler on our Lambda, or else we're going to run into a problem. So what we'll do is we'll say .when complete, and this function will fire regardless of what happens, whether it's a success or a failure, and we'll just go ahead and switch on that result. All right, so as you can see, we have the when complete and it's block receiving the result. Switch on that success. We're gonna say completion success, and we'll just pass in a string because that's what it's expecting in the completion, a string for a success result. And then if we get the failure, then we'll just simply pass that error down. So that's going to essentially handle all the sending of the message, and that's going to pretty much be done with the Lambda, with the exception of needing this application ID. So what we're going to do is we need to actually go through the other steps, which is go to the developer portal and get all that squared away so that we can have the .p8 file and we can get our notifications added to our Amplify application. But before I do that, what I want to do is I'm going to complete this Lambda, and I'm going to actually pass it in as an environment variable, because this is best practice. If somebody were to get access to the ID right here, it could potentially be bad if you were to hard code it right there, but also it makes it easier so that you can use the same Lambda in production. And we could have even made this, where is it? The APNs, we could like have like a different environment variable that says like is production or something like that, and then we could switch off the two. But essentially using environment variables to change the functionality of the Lambda without really having to go back and create a whole new Lambda. So let's go ahead and wrap this Lambda up by creating our pinpoint application ID. All right, so I just followed the same naming conventions as above. So, I mean, you can do it however you want, but I think it's just better to stay consistent. And now we'll have this string as pinpoint app ID, and we should be able to just pass that in right here. So pinpoint application ID right there, and we'll just go ahead and let's go ahead and double check that it's there. All right, so as you can see, since it's returning an optional string, we want to unwrap it early and fail early so that we're not spending time doing extra logic, you know, early, right? So, and we'll actually do that up here before the loop so that we're not trying to do it several times. So we want to fail early if possible. So we want to unwrap this pinpoint application ID, and then we also want to return a failure, a completion, and then the failure. And then we could just simply pass that pinpoint application ID right there. So our Lambda code is all done, but we still need to go through the entire developer portal process, like I said. So back over to your browser, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over to developer.apple.com, and we'll go to account. And once they're all signed in, what you're going to do is you're going to go to certificates and IDs. You'll go to keys, and then what you want to do is you want to create an APNs key. Now I have one too many. I'm gonna revoke this test one, and we'll create a new one. So let's go ahead and create a new one. I'll call it test key. It doesn't matter. Test APNs. Call it whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. Select Apple push notifications right there. We're gonna hit continue. We're gonna hit register, and we're gonna hit download. You will need this key. It's going to be the P8 file that we're going to be using, and I think I'm just going to keep mine in my downloads. So as you can see, that's my auth key right there, and let's go ahead and keep going. Next, what we need to do is we need to go to identifiers, and we're gonna add we're gonna double check and look for our identifier, which is it had our push notifications tutorial, that is. And as you can see here, we need to make sure, once again, push notifications is selected, and then what we'll do is we'll hit configure. So what we need to do is we need to create a development SSL certificate. I'll go ahead and go to create. Platform is going to be iOS, and then it's going to ask you to upload a certificate signing request. So now what you need to do is you need to open up keychain access, and I'm going to keep that off screen, but keychain access is selected, as you can see up. Well, you won't be able to see it up here at the top, but keychain access is opened. Let's see if you'll be able to see it at the bottom. Anyways, keychain access is open. You can see this about keychain access, right? What you're going to do is you're going to do certificate assistant, and you're going to do request a certificate from a certificate authority. You select that one, and then you're going to select saved to disk, and then you have to enter in an email address. I'll enter in my throwaway one. Hotmail, that's how you know it's crap. and you go to continue, and then you decide where you're going to keep that. I'll just keep it in downloads because yes. So now that that's saved, we're done there, and we upload this file from our downloads. So let's see. All right, so I found it, certificate signing request. We're going to open that wherever you saved it, and then we're going to do continue. After you do that, you're going to download this file as well. You have your APNs development certificate, and that should be in your downloads, and you're just going to double click that. So that's going to add that to your keychain, and everything's going to be good. So now lots and lots of steps here, right? And I don't really understand all those steps. I just have them memorized because I've gone through this process so many times in the past. I don't understand all this, so don't worry if you don't understand all this. What we need to do is we need to head back over to our iOS project. So I'm going to change directory out of the Lambda directory. I'm going to go into the push notifications iOS app like that. Now I'm in the iOS directory, right? And then what I'm going to do is, remember, I still have, I should be able to do any of the Amplify CLI commands. I'll do Amplify add notification, Amplify add, yeah, notifications, maybe. Yeah, so notifications. So then what we're gonna do is select APNs, right? Apple Push Notification Service, right? And you can do whatever you want here, enter in whatever you want, but I'm just gonna press enter and give it the default values for each of these things. Now it's gonna continue to go through and ask me all kinds of questions. We are going to be working with a, let me think, I wanna say it's a key. And the bundle ID of the APNs tokens, the bundle ID that we're going to be using is our iOS bundle ID right here. So we're gonna grab that. We'll paste in our iOS apps bundle ID like that. The team ID you can get from your developer portal. Probably shouldn't be showing you guys all my information, but it is what it is. You can get that at the top right of your developer portal. And you open your terminal again and you paste that in there. And then the key ID used for the APNs tokens. So the key ID is going to be actually included with the P8 file. So you'll be able to see it's after the underscore right here. Right there. You're going to copy that. You'll paste that in there, hit enter, and then the file path to the P8. So if you have it open in Finder, you can just drag and drop like that. And then you can make sure you delete the space because it automatically adds a space, and then you hit enter. So then what should happen is you should be all set up with APNs, and we're gonna do Command K to close that, or to clear that. And then we need to do push, we need to do Amplify console notifications. So what this command does, Amplify console notifications, is it will open up Amazon Pinpoint, and it will take you to your setup for push notifications, which we just added. We open up the push notifications, or actually we go from over here to general settings, and then your project ID is right here. So this is the pinpoint application ID that we would have been using inside of our Lambda. And that's what we're gonna actually be passing in right here to this key in a couple of minutes. So now that we have all of that set up, right? Now that we've gone to the developer portal and we have everything set up, we have our P8 and everything like that, what we need to do is we need to package this Lambda up and get ready to go. So we can close this Xcode project because we're not gonna need it anymore. I'm going to open up the terminal. I'm going to clear it. I'm going to go back over to the Lambda folder. So change directory back over to push notifications Lambda. So now I'm in the Lambdas directory. And then what I'm going to do is SLaM, and I'm going to do setup image. So this is the part where you need Docker, and I can't really show you this, unfortunately, but I do have Docker up and running. Just make sure that at the top right of your screen, there should be like a little Docker icon. Just make sure that's up and running. We're going to do SLaM setup image. It's going to ask you for an image name. So I'm going to say push notification image, push notification tut live, or image. Push notification tut image. Okay, so this is the name of the image that we're creating. And it just depends on your computer, but this may take some time. All right, and that took probably about 2 minutes or so. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this image name because we're gonna need it for the next command. So now what we do is we run SLaM export. Like that. It's gonna ask you for which image you wanna export. We're gonna paste in the push notification tut image, make sure that it's spelled the same. And it's gonna start building this package. Now this will probably take about 5 minutes or so. All right, so that took me about 8 minutes, and you get all these logs right here that are like, you know, sped out at the end. But at the end of the day, you should see that, you know, Lambda packaged, and then you can also get the location of that Lambda, essentially the image all zipped up at this location right here. And this is the zip file that we're going to be using because this is essentially our Lambda. So now what we have to do is we have to head back over to AWS.com, and I'll just create another little tab, and we're gonna open up Lambda this time. So what you do is you go to the top, search for Lambda, and we're gonna just go ahead and click right there. And we're going to create a new function. So create function. And we're going to do author from scratch. You call your Lambda whatever you want. And once you have a name for your Lambda, then what you're going to do is you're going to scroll all the way down and you're going to select provide your own bootstrap for Amazon Linux 2. We want to make sure that create a new role with basic Lambda permissions is already selected. And then we're going to do create function. All right, and creating a function took about 10 seconds on my end, so just keep that in mind. So before we go any further, the majority of you have not subscribed. So if I taught you at least 3 things, I've had to taught you 3 or more things. If I taught you 3 or more things, please subscribe. I taught you 3 things. I feel like I earned it. If I didn't teach you 3 things, I didn't earn it. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and we're going to upload our image. So we're going to do upload zip file. Now it's going to recommend that we actually upload it to Amazon S3 and then we upload it from there. But to reduce the amount of things that you have to use under Amazon, I'm just going to upload it directly to the Lambda itself. So what we'll do is we'll select upload and then we have to navigate to that folder. All right, so I found my root Lambda folder, and as you can see, I don't see a .build folder. So I'm going to do Command Shift period, and it's going to expose our secret files and folders. I select build, I go to Lambda, the only folder that's in there, and then I select lambda.zip. I choose open and I choose save, and it's going to upload our Docker image to Lambda. So as you can see, we were able to successfully upload our image, and now there's a couple of other things that we need to do. Now, one of those things is the environment variables. Remember that I said that we are going to provide the pinpoint ID directly through an environment variable. And as you can see right here, if I open up push notifications Lambda, what we want to do is we want to use this same name right here over here for the environment variable. So we're going to do add environment variable. The key is going to be that, and then the value is going to be, I'm going back over to pinpoint under general settings, project ID. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste that in as the value right there. So then we can go ahead and save that. So now we have our environment variables. And another thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we have permissions to trigger based off of a DynamoDB event. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to basic settings. I'm going to go to edit, And then we're going to do, you see how it says role right here, and then there's this button, select, or that link, select that link. Now, what we want to do is we want to attach a policy. So we need to have permissions. Our Lambda needs to have permissions to not only read from DynamoDB, but it also needs to have permissions to access Pinpoint and send those messages. So what we'll do is we'll attach a policy. And as you can see, it's going to list out all the different policies. We're going to go to create a policy. So then what we'll do is we'll choose a service. So let's do the drop down and we're going to find a service. The first one we'll add in is DynamoDB. We're going to select DynamoDB. And then the only thing that we need to do in regards to DynamoDB is just read. But we don't want to do read all. We only need 4 different reads that in order to do push notifications the way that we set it up here. We need to do describe stream. We need to do get item, get records, and get shard iterator. I think those are, it's either describe stream or describe table. I can't really remember off the top of my head, but it's one of these. I think it's describe stream. Then what we'll do is we'll go to the resources area and we want to do specific. I'll just do any for this account. If you want, you can go through, grab the ARN and pass it in here manually, but this should be fine. And then the request conditions, we don't need any of these. So what we'll do is we'll just simply go to add additional permission, because now we need to also include the pinpoint. So we'll once again choose a service. We're going to type in pinpoint like so. And with pinpoint, we're actually going to be writing. So we're going to do write, and we're going to look for send messages, because that's all we're doing. Remember, we're just sending messages. We're going to go to resources. We'll do the drop down. We'll do specific. We'll choose any in this account. And then once again, request conditions would just leave as is. So we review our policy. We need to give it a name. So I'm just going to call this my push notifications type policy, and then you can just add in whatever description you like. All right, so I just added mine in there. Policy used to observe DynamoDB table events and send push notifications with pinpoint. And then we see all that. We go to create policy, and now our policy has been created. So we can go back to the previous tab, and what we'll do is, all right, we'll go back to the previous tab. I don't know which one it was, so I'll just go back over to that area. I'm going to go to my, I'm under roles right now, and I have my Lambda right here. We want to attach a policy, and we'll go ahead and search for our notifications. So this is the one that I made right here, push notifications tut policy. That's the one I just made. You guys watch me make it. And we'll attach that policy. So now we have permission to do those things that we wrote in our Lambda, which is observe DynamoDB events and then also send messages with pinpoint. So now that that's all set up, we can go back over to our push notification tut Lambda, and we can add a trigger. So the trigger is going to be based off of DynamoDB. So we'll select DynamoDB, and then we want to search for a specific table. Now, in order to find that table and its name, what we can do is we can go back over to the terminal. I'll clear it. I'm going to change directory back into our iOS app, and we'll say iOS, and I'll do Amplify console. It's going to give me 2 options, whether I want to do admin UI or Amplify console. I want console this time. And what we can do is we should be able to go to API and view, we might need to view an app sync. I forgot exactly how I did this. So I think view an app sync. And then we're going to go to data sources, and we're going to take a look at this one. The reason why I'm looking it up is because I have a lot of them called message, and I want to make sure that I get the right one. So mine is going to be message, and then the first 3 are Y and F, and the last 3 are MCY. So let's see if we can find that specific one back over in this Lambda. So we're going to type in message, and we have YNF MCY. So that's the one that I want. And let's go ahead and double check everything. Everything else looks okay. Let's see what's under additional settings. Everything else looks fine. So we'll just go ahead and go to add. And now we successfully added our DynamoDB trigger. So that is pretty much everything that we need to do. All we have to do now is just test to see that this works. So a lot of stuff has gone on before we were able to test. You're gonna have to follow those directions step by step in order to get it right, just like I did here, or else you're gonna have to debug along the way, and there's like a lot of areas along the way where it could break. So unfortunately, hopefully that doesn't happen to you. So let's see, we are cool if this works. So as you can see, I haven't done anything. We're just gonna hit send. We can see that the image has been created, and hopefully we get a push notification. It might take a couple of seconds during the first time, and it doesn't look like it's working. So it might take a couple of seconds for the first time. Also, the first one may not trigger all the time also. So that might be the problem. I'm gonna actually go ahead and try to run the application one more time, make sure that everything is up to date on the app itself. And let's go ahead and try this again. Let's try this again. So we send, we see that the object was created, and hopefully, oh, and there it is. There it is, see? So I just needed to update. So let's try again, and bam, you can see the sexy Swift Lambda right there popped up on my screen. And, you know, let's try something else. Make sure you subscribe. I mean, come on, this was a long video. So there it is. Make sure you subscribe. Sexy Swift Lambda. That was what we had right there. Awesome. So that was a super long video. I know. Should have broken it up into multiple videos. Maybe, but I don't like to go through the whole entire process and interrupt it. I want you guys to see what it's like to sit through, and I can explain everything and not have train of thought or whatever. Anyways, I think I taught you more than 3 things. If you watch this video, for sure I taught you more than 3 things. You need to subscribe. I'm sorry. You just need to subscribe. I appreciate your time. If there are any videos that you want to see, then make sure you leave them in the comments. If I get more than, let's say, 250 likes on this video, you know, then I'm definitely gonna take one of the comments and I'll do those. I'll make a video on the one that I think is most interesting to everybody, and I'll make that video ASAP. So 250 likes within a week. I'm gonna choose the highest liked comment, and I'm gonna make a video on that thing. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thank you for your time. Go out there and keep coding passionately.